love to welcome everybody tonight. Tonight we're having a panel discussion on small business law. We have with us attorney Frank Manfredi. His office is out of Norwich. We have Victoria Mueller. Her office is in New London. And we have Rebecca Alberts. She is the owner and head brewer at These Guys Brewing in Norwich. And so they're going to be here tonight to be really answering some questions that everybody might have about small business law. So what I would like to do is give each of them about 5 minutes to introduce themselves, talk about maybe the areas that they specialize in, who they are, what they do, the practice that they're with, and then we'll open it up to questions. The questions would be great if we could put them into chat, and then I will ask, I will throw it out there and ask the panel what the question is. That way we're not all trying to talk over the top of each other, because I know that sometimes Zoom conversations can be a little bit unwieldy. So if you have a question and then a follow-up question, just say it's a follow-up for whomever. So I'd like to kick it off, and we'll kick it off with Rebecca Alberts, since she is first in alphabetical order.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Alberts. I am the owner and head brewer with my husband of These Guys Brewing Company. We're a small business located in downtown Norwich. We've been open a little over 5 years. We specialize in manufacturing beer, but we also have a running brew pub. So with COVID, it's been a little tricky. We're a little over 100 seats, and right now, obviously, that's cut in half. But manufacturing is still allowed to function at 100% capacity. So that's been helpful. I apologize if you hear tractors or anything. I'm at my home now, sitting outside, enjoying the daylight for once. What I would like to talk about is the fact that even if you're a small business owner and you've either inherited a company or you're starting your own, there are little snafus that can happen at any point in time that need a lawyer just to be there for you, to give you guidance. And then there's actual things that come up that can be very detrimental to your business that you cannot foresee or don't foresee, and they come through as well. I've had a situation where we originally started with 2 family friends, and they ended up embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from us. And we had a attorney that represented our company, and it actually ended up that we had to hire a separate attorney because we were fighting with some of the business owners who that original attorney represented all of us, and that couldn't happen. And then there's little snafus that come up that you just need guidance on the law. For example, since outdoor seating is now approved statewide, wherever towns and municipalities allow it, we've had a lot of people bring pets to sit outside or sit inside, and how you are allowed legally to speak to somebody when they don't have any jacket on the vest of the dog or a special collar on the vest of the dog, how and when it's appropriate to talk to someone, because you can be sued very easily for the minor things of how you say things. So in all aspects, it's always good to have a couple different specialized attorneys on your team. And that doesn't mean that it has to cost you a lot of money, but you also want to make sure that your LLC or, your S Corp, however you're running your company, when you're trying to get going, that you make sure that you do everything right to the betterment of your specialized industry, and not just go rogue and think that you know it all. Because it's better to spend the money up front and have a good team on your side and great knowledge than to, in retrospect, have to be spending more money later on with more headaches.
Thanks, Becca. So let's move on to Frank Manfredi. I think that you might be muted right now, Frank. So you might have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now, Miriam?
I can hear you now, Frank.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm Frank Manfredi. I'm an attorney in Norwich. My firm is Cotter, Greenfield, Manfredi, and Lennis. I've been practicing in Norwich about 36 or 7 years or so. And I have a kind of a general practice. I'm not a specialist in business operations, but I do have a lot of business clients, and I have done a lot of incorporations and formations of LLCs, and advise a lot of small businesses about their activities. Even though I don't consider myself a specialist, I do a lot of litigation. I do a lot of business litigation. I was a town attorney in the town of Preston for about 25 years, and I still represent the housing authority. And I also am on the board of directors for MCDC in Norwich, and have been for a few years. That's how I know Miria when she used to work there. So I think I have a fair amount of experience and knowledge to answer some questions, and I'm happy to do so tonight.
Great, thanks, Frank. All right, and last but definitely not least is Victoria Mueller.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me too. I'm really excited to be here, happy to answer questions. I have a law firm in downtown London. I have a law partner, Matt Green, and we've been in business together for 2 years. Prior to that, I was 5 years at another firm downtown and 2 years at another firm downtown before I stepped out on my own with Matt. And our practice specializes, we do a lot of real estate. We do a lot of business advising. Any lawyer will never call themselves an expert in anything, so I'm certainly not an expert in anything like Frank said. But I do have a good working knowledge. I've formed a lot of entities. I've formed nonprofits. I have broken up corporations. I've sued corporations. Anything under the sun, I think I've pretty much touched it or seen some pieces of it. So I think what Becca said was really smart. I don't know how Frank runs his practice, but I have a lot of clients who I want you to call me first before there's a problem that's going to be a lot worse to undo, rather than just thinking you know what you're doing and running into something, signing something. You know, people trying to get out of things is way worse than me helping them get into the right thing. So what Becca said about a team and trusting your people is really, really valuable. And if you find the right people, you won't be facing big bills and you won't have those worries because you know that those people are there to take care of you too. So that's the philosophy we have at our firm. We love business and we love learning about different businesses, and we represent all different kinds of businesses, from restaurants, construction companies, hotels, car dealerships, really any kind of thing, small and large. So again, it is really crucial to have people that you can call and people that understand what your business is so that they can best put you or, you know, position you legally. So like Frank said, I'm really happy to answer questions. I hope I can be of some assistance.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I have some general questions that, you know, I think most people would be interested in, but for sure, if anybody has any questions for the panel, please go ahead and start typing them in. So the first question that most people ask when they're starting a small business panel is what kind of company should they be setting up? An LLC, a single operator, a partnership, a corporation?
So, Victoria, or you want me to get
Well,
that?
I was going to say, Frank, I mean, what I would say is I would give you the answer that every lawyer will give you, which is it depends. So if you want to pick up that ball and run with it, I'm happy to come back after and see what you didn't hit on.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't catch everything you said, but, you know, as far as what type of a business entity should a small business have, the first thing I always tell people is, you know, like single people who want to form an LLC, before you even get to that point, I mean, as a business person, I think the first things you need to do, besides talking to a lawyer, are talking to your accountant and talking to your insurance agent. I think insurance is probably one of the most important things for a small business owner to really have a good grip on, to make sure that all their activities are covered, especially businesses where they're doing any kind of contracting, or if they're driving around a lot, you've got to make sure you have your liability insurance intact, you know, things to cover business interruption. But to contact your insurance agent, if you don't have one, to find an insurance agent who you can work with and who has experience with businesses also. And also to contact an accountant to get an idea of what the accounting issues are, because frankly, forming an LLC or just establishing a sole proprietorship is not difficult from a legal point of view. It's all the other things that come together for a small business that they need to really be aware of. So, you know, for a small business, a single person, I think an LLC is probably the way most people go these days. It's probably the easiest thing to set up. It's very quick and easy to do. There's just basically one piece of paper you have to file with the Secretary of State's office and pay the filing fee, which is, I think, $120 now. And you're off to the races, and then get your tax EIN number and you can go. But like I say, my advice usually when I sit down and start with people for small businesses is to really get their insurance and their accounting issues in order. I don't know how you feel about that, Victoria, but that's kind of the way I start off.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the legal vehicle you put yourself in really greatly depends on what it is you're doing and what you need to protect. Limited liability companies do exactly what they're called. They limit your liability, and they limit the liability for the owners and agents and people that are associated with the business for any issues that come along with the business. So if so I always use the example of like a real estate LLC. If you buy a commercial building, you're going to have tenants in it, and you put that building in an LLC, form an LLC to hold the entity. If something ever happened with the building, if you had a tenant who fell down the staircase and broke their leg, that tenant would be limited in its recovery against you as to the assets only of that LLC. And so if the only thing the LLC owns is the real estate, then that's the only thing that's easily attachable as part of a litigation. So that's where we come up with limited liability companies. So for people who have personal assets like Becca, me, people who have a home, and you have a business, your business is best protected in some kind of entity so that your personal assets cannot be attached if something goes wrong with the business. That's the point of what we're doing. The same thing happens when you form a partnership, a limited partnership, S Corp, C Corp, any kind of thing. All of those things, all of those entities are just different legal vehicles, like I said, to do different things. A corporation is better if you're going to have a lot of people involved and you want to issue shares out and have people owning the business over time, if you want that ability. If it's a single member LLC, like Frank was talking about, you know, a single, talk about a contractor, like a home improvement person, you know, that's a little different. You don't need to issue shares of stock because it's probably just you. Maybe you bring on an employee, maybe you give the company to your son. These are all the questions that I would ask you if you come to see me and say, I want to form an LLC. As Frank said, that's usually not the first thing you do. There are a lot more questions that go into it before you figure out if that's necessary or proper and going to accomplish what it is, you know, you need it to accomplish. So, you know, as much as we like to give information and definitive info, it goes right back to what I first said, which is it really depends. And any good lawyer is going to ask you all these questions before they say, okay, we'll put you in an LLC. It's $120, like Frank said, and you'll be on your way. So it really does depend.
All right, thank you. If for other people that might have other questions, please feel free to chime in. I can go down my list of most asked questions, but please, you have some attorneys at your beck and call right now, and they'll be happy to answer questions later, I'm sure, but I'm not sure they'll be free. So, how should people go about making sure that their business is set up legally?
Set up legally?
What?
Yeah, so that how would people go about making sure when they're starting their business that they do it legally? Like, what are the steps to protect them as they go? So, you know, I've seen some businesses who would say, I want to be called XYZ business. And then they come to you and they start the LLC process in XYZ business, but maybe they didn't try registering that with the state first. So what are the steps that they should be going through at this point to make sure that when they are setting up their business that they're doing it in the right way, that it's going to be legal, going to minimize their liability as they're going?
You want to take that first, Victoria, or you want me to go?
All you, Frank. You're going first. I think I've decided. You go first. I'll hit cleanup.
Okay. So I think we talked a little bit about that already, but you know, first of all, you got to know what you want to do. You're talking about a business name for one thing. One thing that you always do is try to reserve a name with the Secretary of State's office to see if it's already been taken. You'd be surprised how many names are out there that are very similar or are actually the same that some of these small businesses may want to use. So there is a process where you can file a request to reserve a name with the Secretary of State's office and make sure that it isn't already taken. So that's one step, and it's easy enough for a individual to do. You don't need a lawyer to do that. You just go on the Secretary of State's website and you can do a business search and find out, or you can actually file a form to reserve a name. So that's one thing. Obviously, you know, one thing you should have if you're going into business is a business plan. Not really a legal requirement, but anybody who is, you know, contemplating a business should have a business plan. And NCDC has a lot of services to offer to people to help them with business plans. A lot of banks, Myria, as you know, have services to help with the business plans to make sure that people understand the financial obligations that they're getting into when they start a business, what their goals are, how they expect to accomplish their goals. You know, what are they gonna do for their organization? Are they gonna have employees? As I said before, insurance to me is a key. You want to have good insurance, because even if you have the protection of a limited liability company or a corporation, I think you still want to have insurance to have that first insulation against anything to cover you. The accounting procedures to understand what your tax obligations are going to be when you have set up a business. You're probably going to have to file quarterly taxes and reports, and that's something that a lot of people are not familiar with, and they need to get familiar with if they're going to have a business of their own. So those are the things that I think are most important to start with, and obviously to know what your business is going to be and how you're going to actually conduct your business. You know, if you're going to be selling products, how are you going to do that? Are you going to set up a shop somewhere? Are you going to lease? You're going to buy? All these things are important to know, and that's all part of business planning. So the legal end of it, again, you have to determine what kind of a business setup you want. Do you want a sole proprietorship? As Victoria said, if there's going to be a lot of people involved and it's going to, you expect a business that's going to be of long standing, you may want to think about a corporation and issuing stocks and that type of thing. That's a little more complicated than an LLC, because with a corporation, you have to issue stocks, you have to appoint officers and boards of directors and have meetings and keep minutes. LLCs, you don't have that kind of formality, so it's a lot easier for a single person to use an LLC than a corporation. So there's things to think about when you're approaching it. You know, if you're having investors, you can have more than one investor in an LLC, but maybe another business entity is more appropriate. A corporation, maybe a limited liability partnership. There are a lot of different ways or different entities out there that businesses can use to accomplish what they need to do to carry out their business function. So that's kind of my take on that, Victoria.
I think you did a really good job answering that question. The only thing I would say is what I think you're going to say, Becca, which is that businesses are different. Becca needs a liquor license. Becca needs a tavern license. Becca needs certain things to operate her business. That's different than contractor who doesn't need that. He needs to make sure his home improvement license is in order. He needs to make sure his contract meets the Home Improvement Act. It's different. And so my point of saying that is that this is why it really does depend on what your business is. And if Becca comes to me and says, I want to start brewing beer, and then I want to have a brew pub and serve food at it, I know enough to know that she's going to have to interface with multiple state agencies, and she needs to do that first. I'm going to have her do that first, because if she can't get her liquor license, then she can't have her business. And so this is another reason why it's really important to start sort of having these conversations at this level, so that you can avoid getting yourself into a lease and outfitting a place and buying all this expensive stuff that you can't do anything with because you're not licensed. So sorry, Becca, to cut you off, but that's all I was thinking the whole time he was talking.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. In addition, the only thing that I would like to say, because of my own personal experience, is you need articles of organization. I don't care if you've been married for 40 years, he's your high school or she's your high school sweetheart. You need to protect yourself. We had, genuine family friends for over 20 years invest in us, only to find out that they were embezzling from us. So if we didn't have a great articles of organization to keep it organized and keep it, ours was not a standard one with the state of Connecticut because our situation wasn't standard. We had more sweat equity. They had a little bit more cash flow to get us going, and then it kind of flip-flopped. So if we didn't have the availability to literally take them off of the company accounts right there on the spot when we questioned it, and we needed that for the bank to remove them. So if you don't have that, you're not protected. And even now with just my husband and me, because we went through this, it's not to show that you don't trust someone. It's just to protect yourself. You know, heaven forbid something happened to him and then his family wants his half. You know, like you just have to make sure that you have everything organized so that there's no what ifs.
Yes, what I call that is it's all good until it ain't. Right? It's all good until it ain't. We all love each other. We have this exciting business and everything's going great and we love each other. And it's all good until it ain't, until there's a problem, until you're embezzling $20,000, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars from me. And what Becca's talking, she's saying articles of organization. I think you mean operating agreement. Yeah. Your operating, it's okay. Your operating agreement for your LLC is what spells out your operating agreement. How do you operate this company? Who does what? Whose responsibility is this? Does someone a manager? Does the manager have to have consent from everyone? Can the manager decide to make expenditures up to $500 without consulting? Or do we want that manager to consult us for anything over $50? It depends, right? It depends. You have the power to craft whatever you want in your operating agreement, in your formative documents. Same thing with the shareholder agreement for a corporation, a partnership agreement for a partnership. Those are things that your lawyer creates for you. And yes, they exist, boilerplate documents. Yeah, they're out there. You could find one on the internet. You could download one right now. They're out there. They're long. They look very fancy. They have a lot of words in them. But they probably don't really cover, if you actually read it, what you really want to have happen. And that's what you get a lawyer for. That's what we do. That's what Frank would do. When you get to the point where we've figured out what we're going to, you know, are you an LLC, are you a partnership? Now we sit down to drafting the operating agreement. What is the status here? What is the situation here? And I know for me, after I meet with my clients and start drafting the operating agreement, that's when I sit at my desk and have a million more questions about, well, what if this? And well, what if that happens? And what if they embezzle? And do I want, you know, does 2/3 vote make sense if there are 5 people? And this one's married to that one? And are they really, you know, those are all real things that I think about when I put the paperwork together. Again, you're not going to get that from, again, just sort of a boilerplate agreement, which you'll see. And people use them all the time. And I'm sure Frank has seen it too, where I have had people litigate, have litigation between partners, litigation over a corporation, litigation over an LLC, and, you know, people who signed a boilerplate operating agreement at the bank closing table to buy a piece of property that says whatever it says because the bank created it for you to sign it to have it in their closing file. Guess what? That's your operating agreement. And I've had people sitting on a witness stand saying, I don't even recall signing this document because I just signed it as part of a million other things I signed. And so these are, we want to avoid all of that, you know, you want to avoid that. And it really can happen. And so spending the time at the beginning, as Becca said at the very onset, you spend the time in the beginning and really thinking it through is going to pay dividends on the back end every time, because business is full of landmines and every business is different. And then you have coronavirus. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of things that happen. So having things reflective of how you actually operate is really, really important.
I agree. And you're going to need
Go
that.
ahead, Becca.
What was that, Frank?
No, I said go ahead, Becca. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it was me. So what I was saying was that you are going to need that operating agreement when you come to the bank. If you tell us to open up your business account that you have a partnership, they are going to want to see that operating agreement, because that is going to dictate how the account is set up. So you are going to need that in place before you go to the bank and open up your account, because it's going to talk about, you know, who has the right to withdraw money, how much money can they withdraw, how many people have to sign the account, and all of those things that you have to have
So you still there, Maria?
I am. But
Okay.
You're
it
up.
kind of faded out on my end, but well, I just wanted to kind of follow up on what we've been talking about, operating agreements and business arrangements of that nature. One other thing that should think about, depending on how big your business is or grows, is your employees and your relationships with your employees and how those are handled. So a lot of businesses these days have, created employee policies that are found in employee manuals or handbooks. And these are, I think, very important documents, much like operating agreements, that as you grow, I mean, if you're a sole proprietorship and it's just you, obviously you don't have to worry about that. But as you grow a business, if you start increasing your payroll and getting more and more employees, you start offering benefits, you start thinking about the benefits that you're offering. It really should be set out somewhere so that when you have a hire or when you have issues with employees, you have something to look at and say, well, this is, how things work here, and this is what we do and why we do it and how we do it, so that employees know what their rights and benefits are, and the employer also knows. So I think that's a pretty important document, also like the operating agreement that Victoria was talking about.
Great, thank you. Did anybody have any more on that? If not, I would like to ask Becca, when you formed your partnership and then you were operating, what were some signs that you saw that maybe started to alert you that you were having some issues within the company?
So we were doing very well. Year 1, 2, and 3, we were doing extremely well, growing actually at about a 12% increase. And all of this, so initially in our operating agreement, my husband and I did all the day-to-days with the majority shareholders of the company, and the minority shareholders, because initially they had invested more cash, they were trusted with paying the bills. And then we were making lots of cash and they weren't depositing it. So vendors were calling, asking why bills weren't paid. And initially they were calling the partners, and the partners were dodging them. And it ended up, they came down from Massachusetts and we confronted them, and it wasn't so pretty. But to make a long story short, it's most important that even if you're not handling the day-to-day bills, invoices, cash flow, you at least always go over it. One of the things in our agreement was that we were supposed to meet quarterly and go over everything. And every time we had a quarterly meeting, year 1, they were on vacation or they weren't around. And then we would try and reschedule, and it just over time got more and more pushback. And to be honest, it was partially my husband's and my fault, because we were just so busy running the day-to-day that we trusted them. Whoever thinks that someone that you've been family friends with for 20 years would take advantage of you and your hard work and your work ethic. And then there became a point where we went to go get paid ourselves and take what's known as a draw when you're an LLC owner, and there was no money to draw for our regular pay. So I don't want to make it all sound gloom and doom, because obviously with the documents that we have, my husband and I now own the whole company, and we received our company without any drama. We did go to arbitration. Sorry, I'm trying to get the ball from my dog. We did go to arbitration and we won, but it's just like I said, it's just extra layers. And if we didn't have good counsel in the very beginning to save us and go over everything, I think a lot of people have the mentality that no lawyer is a good lawyer, and that's just so not the case. eventually everybody has to deal with a lawyer on some level, whether you have a deceased relative or a business that you're trying to open. And I think it's always good to have a team, and you never know, your first meeting with a lawyer might not be a great fit. They might try and convince you to do something that you're not comfortable with. So then you keep looking, and you'll find someone that has your niche, that has all your best intentions for your company and for your company to grow. Because let's face it, nobody goes into business to just be lackadaisical. You all have a drive and a hunger to be self-employed, and that's admirable. And I think that a lot of lawyers have that same knowledge and influence, and they can help you, they can guide you, and I don't think they get enough credit for that.
Great, thank you. Does Frank or Victoria have anything to say about that? Everybody's muted. So.
Hold on. All right. Sorry, I'm off mute. Yeah, I mean, I think Becca had a bad experience, but it's not unique, unfortunately. And that's what Frank and I deal with. And because we deal with such unpleasant fallout, I think it makes you a better practitioner. You can protect your clients from things that you see happening. What was it? No lawyer is a good lawyer? Yeah, I like that. I haven't heard that one. I like it, though. I understand it completely. I think lawyers, a lot of them deserve their bad reputation, quite frankly. But there are some good ones out there. We are out there.
But a lot of you don't. Yeah, a lot of
right.
you don't.
We right. And I always try to just do right by my clients so that they know I'm not a bad lawyer and I don't take advantage of them. And but Becca's right. There is someone out there for you. Find the right fit. It's like finding a therapist. It's like finding a doctor. It's like, who do you like them? Can you talk to them? If you can't be upfront with your lawyer, if you can't tell me the truth, if you can't tell me what's going on, I can't help you. So if you don't feel comfortable with me for whatever reason, then it's not going to work for either one of us. So what she's saying is 100% true. I think that it doesn't have to be a scary process. And the earlier you engage and the earlier you start the conversation, the better off you'll be. Because that person, whether it's me or Frank or any lawyer really, is going to take more of a vested interest and want to help you succeed and understanding what you're trying to do. So don't be afraid. And if you don't have a good experience, keep looking, because she's also right. Eventually you're going to need to call someone, and it's better if you have a connection, a relationship. You can text me on the weekend and I will answer your question. I mean, that's who, as a restaurant owner, wants to wait to hear back from their lawyer on Monday morning? Nobody. So those are really important things. You can create them. It's just a matter of creating relationships like you probably do in your business anyway. So I just would echo her sentiments. We're not all bad, and you do need us eventually. So,
Yeah, and there's I think what people don't realize is that you honestly most likely will use more than one for a different tool in your toolbox. Like you said before that, I'm a manufacturer. So there's lots of legal litigation that goes with getting a liquor license and the background check and how long it takes. And if you don't have guidance in that, then you need someone that specializes in that. And then when it comes to like looking over the employee handbook, like Frank had said, you have somebody else that does HR kind of law. And that all of these things end up protecting you in the long run when you fire somebody, when somebody tries to sue you for wrongful termination, or I hate to say this, but a lot of people are just sue happy. They just want a quick, easy dollar, and they try and find a way. And it's unfortunate, but these are the times. So the more people that you have, and like Victoria said, we've had an attorney that was with us from the very beginning. And like I said, he couldn't represent us when we went, up against our old partners, but he gave me the best attorney he could find to make sure that we were okay. And in addition, when we were doing all of our articles of organization and our supporting documents, operating agreement, he deliberately didn't go with one that he would rubber stamp. And I think that I think my husband and I met with maybe 3 attorneys before we really found somebody that we were comfortable with to like go over in detail. And then he found us 3 great accountants. You know, call each of these guys, or one was a woman, and see which one, you know, knows that you feel the most comfortable with sharing the most amount of information, because that's what it is. You know, you're just protecting your own assets from future problems. And I think everybody gets afraid that lawyers cost so much money, but you know, they're not, it's not unreasonable for what you get. You get what you pay for. And if you pay nothing up front, you're going to pay long-term, in the long run, tons more. So you have to budget for these things when you're creating any entity. That would be my advice.
Awesome. We have about 15 minutes left. So we've got some people on the call, and if you have any specific questions about your particular business, please feel free to unmute yourself or shout us out a question in chat, and you know, specifically ask somebody a question. Because this is a really great chance, even if it's to ask Becca questions about starting up. Her business is, are you 4 or 5 years old now? 3, 5?
A little over 5, 5.5.
Yeah. So, you know, she's new ish. She hasn't been in it, you know, for 20 years. So I'm sure she can remember back to startup. So plus she with Frank also sits on the board of NCDC. So for those aren't familiar, that's Norwich Community Development Corporation. So they are the economic development agency for the city of Norwich. And you'll be speaking with Jason Vincent later to talk about business plans. He's going to, he's the president, and he's going to be walking people through writing a business plan. So, you know, if you have some questions, now's the time. Feel free to chat us in or unmute yourself. Unless you see anything else coming in, does Frank or Victoria or Becca have any final messages for anybody, or things that you think we haven't covered that are important?
I think you've touched it. Again, I would just reiterate that it's personal. It should be a personalized process. It's not one size fits all. So if you think it is, you're wrong, and you're going to see some problems from that. You know, it's just not. And that's why you consult professionals, insurance people, like Frank said, insurance people, accountants. I mean, and again, I don't do all of those things. You need those people in your orbit to rely on them for their services too. So it's not anything that any one person does alone. I own a business. I have an insurance agent. I have an accountant. I have, you know, so those are people that help me run my business. I call them all the time with questions. So without them, I don't, you know, I would be adrift too. So to me, it's really important, like everyone has said, you know, creating that relationship will serve you well. Lawyers are reasonable. You get the fees up front, so you should know what you're walking into in terms of what a cost is going to be for you. If you're not comfortable with the cost, you can always try to go, you know, usually people work with you. But it's sort of like, it's something that it is always going to be worth it, the peace of mind. And again, a partnership with someone who has some expertise and can hold your hand a little bit through, you know, sort of some unpredictable stuff. So,
Maria, can I chime in for a second?
Please do.
Yeah, so just kind of following up some of the stuff about lawyers and good lawyers and bad lawyers. I think what people ought to think about when they're looking for lawyers is do like everything else that you do, is try to get a referral from somebody you know and trust. You know, if you know another business person, if you know Becca, you know, to get referrals to lawyers, just like you get a referral to a doctor. If you don't know anybody, call the Bar Association. They have a whole bank of lawyers that they can refer you to and give you some names on. And again, as Victoria and Becca said, you know, kind of shop around, just like you do, hopefully for everything else, and you know, talk to a few different lawyers and see if you can, you know, get along with them and feel comfortable with them, and do it the same way you would, you know, try to find a doctor or an insurance agent or an accountant. But you can't just walk into the first place that you pull out of the internet and say, you know, this is the lawyer I'm gonna hire. You know, look around and talk to people, get referrals.
Awesome.
Yeah, in addition to getting a referral, the other thing that I would say, sorry to cut you off, Mary, is that before we went into business, we went and talked with about 7 people that were already in the industry that we wanted to get into. So that was a way that we got an introduction to our first attorney, because he already represented 2 of, you know, they were our future competitors. So I think that it's good because some people in the industry have already done a lot of the legwork for you, and even though those people might not be the people that you choose, at least you're getting a referral, and then it's not just a personal referral. In addition, I think both is good, if that makes sense. You know, I know Frank from the NCDC board, but Victoria Mueller is Miriam. She's the attorney that represents. There's just different options and ways to go about finding an attorney, a good attorney.
Absolutely. Becca and I sit on a nonprofit together, and Victoria helped us form the nonprofit originally. So, you know, there are definitely people out there for kind of business, what you've got. Some people are more familiar with, you know, like corporations versus small LLC. So you might want, if you're going to end up being like a large C Corp or S Corp, you might want a different type of attorney than you would want if you were going to do small business.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you came to me and you said to me, I want to form a multinational, multi-million-dollar corporation, I mean, I could do it, but I wouldn't do it for you. And I'd send you somewhere up to Hartford, because that's more what you need. And that's the beauty of, you know, again, shopping around and knowing that, you know, there are different services and different things that are appropriate for different people. And once you start the dialogue, you get a lot better shape to figure out if you're in the right place talking to the right person.
So if I didn't see any other questions come in, so I'm assuming we have covered all of the questions that everybody ever had in their life. If anybody thinks of anything after this call, or for some reason, you know, missed the call, because we're going to make this recording available later. If you missed and you have a question, please feel free to reach out to me at the bank, and I am happy to put you in touch with Becca, with Frank, with Victoria, or anybody else. So if you have anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, I would love to thank Victoria, Frank, and Becca for taking some time out of their evening to speak with us tonight. I know that it is after hours, and you all are taking extra time out of your day. So I will let everybody go, so maybe you can go enjoy some drag of the sunshine out there.
Thanks, Marianne. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Becca. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you.